So we had a big offer just before the pandemic. It was in three-digit millions. So we were thinking maybe we were getting undervalued.
Yeah.
And then of course what happened in 2019?
COVID hit.
The pandemic came.
That screwed everything
and
up.
that really hit us hard. So I'm sure a lot of networks kind of copied our ideas and came to market.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to the SJ Show, where we talk about unlocking potential and becoming the best versions of ourselves in every aspect of life. Today, I have one of my first mentors and one of the main reasons why I got into entrepreneurship. He gave me my first ever job after university, and he is a successful entrepreneur who has generated over 9 figures in business throughout his career. I want to introduce to you guys Arif Chandoo. Before we get into it, thank you for coming on to the podcast. And can you give a really quick 30-second summary to the people into exactly who you are and what exactly you've done?
Firstly, Salman, it's nice to see how far you've come since working at Worldsim a couple of years ago. Really enjoy following you on your podcasts and your shows. I've crossed 50 now, so for a quick intro is asking a lot, but I'll do my best. If you asked me a couple of years ago, probably I would have said something different to you. But now that I've crossed 50, I would describe myself as an empathetic trailblazer with a strong emphasis on faith, family, community, and philanthropy. And the reason I added empathetic before trailblazer is because I always felt that it was very important not only of what you do in life, but how you do it and how you go about achieving what you want to achieve. Because obviously you have to interact with a lot of people, make a lot of tough decisions, and empathy comes in quite a lot. So that's why I added that before trailblazer.
I definitely think we'll go a little bit more into that down the line, because that is something that is very, very interesting. One of the most humblest introductions that I've ever seen, definitely for somebody who's generated as much as you have in business. But I think what I want to know, or what the people want to know, from your business side of things, from the entrepreneurial side of things, if someone were to come to you and to ask you what you've achieved as an entrepreneur, give me in 3 bullet points what your 3 greatest achievements has been as a businessman.
Trailblazing is something that I like to do. We were the first company that disrupted the international roaming market for travelers in the world. I think we were one of 2 companies going back to the early 2000s that launched a solution for travelers to save costs around the world. So that was a huge achievement. But today I also run 5, maybe, about to start the 6th company. We employ a lot of people around the world, and through that we do a lot of charity work. So that's something that I'm very pleased about as well. And I'm able to give back to community and to do shows like this and mentor young people in their journey. So that's another big achievement for me.
Yeah, no, I think this is one of the reasons that I'm really, really excited about this specific episode, is because what you've seen so far in the first couple of episodes, we've spoken to young entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, people very much at the start of their journey. And I think getting the insight from somebody who is a little bit older but young in spirit is very interesting, because you get that insight from somebody who has done it all, who is no longer working to actually make money, but working because they enjoy it. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah?
I do what I enjoy only today.
That's awesome, right? And I think before we go into the details of the business side of things, I'd love to get a little bit of an insight into, your childhood. Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? How did your upbringing in childhood shape you into the individual and entrepreneur that you've become today?
Yeah, I would say that childhood plays a huge impact on who you become when you're older. And I often reflect upon all my experiences and opportunities as a young man. And it's very different to what youth go through today in the West. I grew up I was born in Tanzania. And when after 6 months, my parents moved to the United Kingdom. They lived in Birmingham and London. And then for economic opportunities, they moved to West Africa. Tanzania's in East Africa, but they moved to a French colony called Zaire back then in West Africa. And I spent a lot of my teens in West Africa. And then we moved again when the country was in chaos and kind of got out of hand.
And did you move because your dad was an entrepreneur, your parents were entrepreneurs, or what were they,
They were entrepreneurs. So these were moves that my parents made for economic reasons. And I think that had a big impact on my mindset as well. In West Africa, everybody that we knew was in business of some kind or the other, or was there predominantly to do business and for the economic opportunities. And today, Zaire has changed its name to Democratic Republic of Congo, but it's one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world. It's where 90% of all the cobalt comes from, which goes into our phones and powers up battery, electric vehicles and so on and so forth. So it's a very rich country, a lot of difficulty, a lot of strife, a lot of chaos amongst the local population. But it taught me a lot of lessons. I left there when I was 13, 14, to come back for education to London. And I finished my A-levels, did my degree at Cass University, which is now, I think, changed its names to Bayes University, an excellent business school, which really gave me the tools and the mindset to understand and evaluate business. I always knew I wanted to go into business because I grew up amongst entrepreneurs. But this kind of formalized my thinking, my ideas. It gave me models and maps and taught me about business plans. And I think, if somebody is a serious entrepreneur, I know today we live in the age of social media and you try and picking up things in social media, but a business tool degree does really help.
There's a lot to actually pick from what you've just said, and it's quite interesting because you said from a very young age, from being a child, you wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So the thing that I've noticed is a lot of people who do start entrepreneurial ventures from a young age, and we talked about this, yesterday, but before I actually ask the question, I want you to share when you had your first little bit of entrepreneurial success. Like, when would you say you saw that proof of concept and you're like, oh, wow, like I made money, doing something entrepreneurial, and like, I know this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Like, where would you say that sort of triggering point was?
I would say 9 or 10 years old, whether it was selling sweets. We'd go on holiday and we'd buy sweets in England, and I'd come back to Africa and I'd bring them to school, and rather than eat them, I would sell them to my friends or exchange them for marbles or other things that they had. So there was all these small interactions that took place when I was a child. And then it kind of got, when I was fortunate in the sense that when I was back in England studying for my GCSEs, I would spend my summers back in Africa working for my mama or my mom's brother. He had a big business in Congo. And I would be traveling alone from the age of 14, 15, 16. And I would meet people on the plane and they would be traveling for business. And I remember one incident where I was going from Lumumbashi, which is a small town in Congo. I think I was only 15 years old. It was a bit scary, but it's maybe a story for another time. But he was on the plane. We were sitting next to each other, and we struck up a conversation. He was surprised because I was quite young. But he said he was going to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, to buy goods to sell in Lumumbashi. And I asked him, "What is it you're looking to buy?" And one of the items he mentioned were candles, because there's lots of power cuts in Africa. Yeah. So people live, and back then in the 1990s, you can imagine, candles were like a huge business. So I told him, I can supply you candles, don't worry. Of course, I didn't really know where I was going to get them from, but I understood what a candle was. And when we arrived in Dar es Salaam, obviously I found out where he was staying. I contacted some of my friends who were in the country. They introduced me to some candle suppliers. And then I went back to him. He liked the product. I got a deposit. We agreed the fee. And I think back then I was only 15, but I made like $2,500 at that age.
But that's probably worth like what, 10 grand today?
Way more than 10 grand.
Damn.
Yeah, way more than 10 grand. With the inflation from the 1990s, much more than 10 grand. And I remember going back to my auntie who I was staying with, and she was like telling all her family members, look, this young kid is making money. Why don't you guys go and work hard? And so there's all small incidents like
but
this.
What did that feel like? Like, was that the biggest amount of money you'd made at that point? You were 15.
For us, that was the kind of dopamine that, today you get dopamine from social media when somebody likes or follows you. But back then, this is way before mobile phones were out. It was stuff like that really kind of inspired me.
But like, to make money like that, you must have been making more than most of like the adults around you, man.
No, I don't know. I mean, there were a lot of very successful entrepreneurs in our community, as you know, going back many generations. So they were all role models and an inspiration. But it was good to know that you could do it and you had some success.
Well, you got the proof of concept, right?
Proof of concept, and that's what kind of kept spurring you on. So I didn't want to, a lot of people think about, they know what they want to do and they want to go into business, but they kind of want to skip their further education and say, well, is it really worth me going to university? And I would say, look, one, there's a brilliant experience at university. Maybe your young audience might be thinking about this, given the number of opportunities there are today to start a business, but they might be thinking, is it worth going to university and getting a degree, or should I just get on with what I want to do? And I would say, look, university has a great experience. The social environment, number one, is good. But number two, if you choose the right course and you research the course well, you'll find that it teaches you it gives you a lot of tools and skills and methods about how to analyze businesses, to conduct yourself in business, and so on and so forth.
I want to challenge you a little bit on that, right? And the reason being is, I'm sure most people who are going to be watching this are going to be sitting there and thinking like, why would I go to university, right? So for example, me, I did a law degree. I never pursued law after because I didn't want to, right? But you speak to a lot of people. They'll go to university, they'll do an economics degree, they'll do a business degree. Now, what's the difference in doing a degree now versus what you did 20 years ago, right? When you went to university, you came out and you now had an opportunity to get these jobs, right? Like there was this good job market, making 25,000, pounds, dollars during that time was good money, right? Now, you come out of university with a business degree or with an economics degree, you're not guaranteed a job. The jobs that you are potentially able to actually do, you're still living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. And not just that, but the argument that people would make is you can go and find a mentor, like yourself, who is, made millions, multi-millions, 8, 9 figures, has generated this and done the practical experience. Why would I go and learn business from somebody at a university who is just teaching you the theoreticals, but they're making 70, 80,000 pounds themselves, but they're not actually doing business, when I could come and work for you and practically learn how to actually run a business directly from you? Why would I want to put myself into $50,000 of debt going to university?
I mean, it's a good question. Obviously, we grew up at a time when there was no social media, there was no YouTube, and I get it today, my own kids, and there was no AI, which is, a huge new invention that's out there, and it's probably going to put, a lot of teachers and professors maybe out of work as well. But obviously at our time, university was the place where you could get knowledge from. It wasn't very easy to get that from, to identify who mentors were. I mean, today, everyone who's a mentor is on social media advertising their services, and your phones are probably listening to you. And if we had a conversation, whatever we're talking about, it's probably going to appear on my feed, later this evening. So it's making suggestions and stuff. But I would still say that there is a experience that you get at university with interacting with other students, with sitting being in an environment that is enjoyable, that allows you to build relationships. Because I do think that, and looking at my kids, is that although you can get a lot of knowledge and information from social media, they're not building long-lasting contacts and relationships. And what universities are very good at is giving you an alumni, a network of people, which I lean on till today, which friends that give you opportunities, share ideas with you, lifelong. So till today, I'm friends with people I met at university. We exchange ideas. We talk about business. I've just been invited to another CAS alumni event. I think that's happening in a week's time. I may not be around, but so I think that side of things is very valuable, because you don't know in life who at what point can help you. You may be successful for a few years in an idea, but things change in business, and you need to have this network of people that you can call upon, lean upon. It's very valuable.
I think it's difficult, right? Because for me to comprehend, because I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, the reason that you're coming from this vantage point is because of the experience that you specifically had, right? Like, you are talking about this from your vantage point because you went to university and it added value towards your life, right? For me, when I went to university, all everyone was doing around me was doing drugs, drinking, getting messed up. That's all I saw around me. And you're right, there are people who you can build connections with, but it was minuscule, right? Like, there weren't as many people as you'd think. And your point of connections that are lifelong is very interesting, because I maybe speak to 3 people who are still at university 5 years later, right? And for me, I learned more in 1.5 to 2 years of working for you than I did in 3 years of my law degree, right? So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not sitting here and downplaying the fact that there isn't value in university. I definitely believe it when it comes to certain academics where you need the specialized skills, right? So, for example, pharmacy, doctor, lawyer, these specialist jobs, you definitely need it. I come out of university and I have $50,000 of debt. Why wouldn't I just leave school and go straight into an apprenticeship and go and work and actually learn how the world works? Because I came out of uni, I had no financial literacy. I didn't know how taxes work. I didn't know how to pay tax. I didn't know what council tax was. I didn't know how to manage my finances. I didn't understand how the government worked. I didn't understand how to manage things like university. The thing that I would argue is, at the end of the day, when you come into this real world, you have to learn a lot of skills to actually survive, right? Cash flow, you have to learn how to budget, you have to learn how to manage your expenses, you have to learn how to grow as an individual. There are theoreticals that you learn at university that I struggle to translate. And the only reason I say that from my own, I'm a lot younger than you, right? So I have a lot to still learn and a lot to grow, but I've learned more from you in the last 3 days of conversations than I learned in 3 years of university. And that's just because I was disillusioned with it.
Yeah, but I think in your case, you did a law degree from what I remember, and obviously you want to become an entrepreneur. I mean, obviously universities have to reinvent themselves and they need to think about their own future and their own business model, and that's for them to think about. I can say from my experience, I thought very much about the degree that I wanted to do, the school that I wanted to go to, what I wanted to get out. One thing I would say today, which I think our youth have a disadvantage compared to us, is we had no phones, right? So we had a lot of time to think ourselves, because today, if you're idle, you'll pick up your phone and start idle scrolling. Yeah. But we didn't have that. So then we would have more time to introspect, to think about, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. And I would recommend our youth to really put their phones down sometimes and, and kind of, ask themselves some very difficult questions or map things out. But for me, I remember I missed the grade for CAS in my strongest subject, which was French, because I grew up in West Africa. I was so confident that I didn't study much for that exam, thinking I'm going to get an A. And I missed the grade, and basically they refused my application. So I was like, what do I do now? But I didn't give up. So I went to my French teacher. I explained the situation. She went to the headmaster. The headmaster wrote a very nice letter for me, like a recommendation. I took the recommendation to the head of the school, the degree. I sat with him. He looked at the letter. He called me in for an interview. And so I persisted and and they grilled me, why should I pick you over somebody that, got the grades and didn't make it in? And I had to answer all these difficult questions. But eventually, because of the persistence, I got into the university that I wanted to go to. And I think maybe that process also, because I had to work, not only do the exams, but then put through loads of interviews, probably made me take my university life.
But wouldn't you also argue that persistency and that determination to get into university came from the work ethic that you'd built as a youngster through your entrepreneurial ventures, through the reselling, through that grind that you'd been doing?
I would say that your youth does have a big impact on your character and your mindset in life. And therefore, I do think that youngsters should reflect on their time as a youth and think about how they're spending their time.
I definitely agree. I think one thing that you said is very powerful that I try and tell people a lot is just try and take a phone detox. Like what I say to a lot of people who I speak to, I say just once a day for 15 minutes, right? Put yourself in a room and just stare at a wall. Like put your phone away, put everything away, and just stare at it and see what comes to your mind, see how the creativity flows. Because you're right, we're in this world right now where people are just mindlessly scrolling, and it means people don't have time to think. People don't even know who they are as individuals because they're not thinking. So I definitely agree with you. I think that's something that's very powerful.
And I also think that as a youngster, you need to think about who you want to be when you're older. So kind of identify personalities or people whether it within your community or family or in the media, and you think, what, when I'm older, I'd like to be like that person. And then kind of look into their traits and their qualities and understand what their journey was. And that helps in mapping out, what decisions that you make in life.
No, I think that's really interesting. I want to move on to post-university. So, we went to university, we did our degree, and then what did we do after university?
So I would say I was very lucky because of my French background. I got a scholarship to go and do a master's, an MBA in Paris at one of the Grand Écoles. So me and a friend from university, we both got invited to do a master's at the École Supérieure de Commerce de Paris. So this was like fully paid for. So we obviously jumped at the opportunity, living as two bachelors in Paris, which is one of the great cities of the world. So I did my master's in Paris. It was a international course. So what I mean by that is there were students from all over Europe and the US. So again, that was a great networking opportunity for myself, and I made a lot of friends there. And then after that, I got a job with Deloitte in consultancy. And then my mom was like, you can't stay in France. You've got to come back to London. So I got a job with NatWest Consultancy. NatWest is a big bank in the United Kingdom, and they had a consulting division which was run by McKinsey at the time. Mm-hmm. So they'd outsourced it to McKinsey, and McKinsey were basically looking at all aspects of the business for them strategically, and kind of looking at which areas they should expand, which they should close down, looking at the opportunities. And I was in that strategic department.
Interesting.
So I got a lot of good insight into business there as well.
I find that really interesting because, as you said, as a youngster, you wanted to go into entrepreneurship, right? So what made you decide to go and get these jobs after uni rather than just go start a business straight away?
I think the discipline, the idea of getting discipline, working in the real world, understanding what it's like to work in the real world was very important to me, because I knew that, look, I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I had a few ideas, but I lacked a lot of things. One was discipline, one was experience, and I think working with a bank like I did for a couple of years definitely grounded me and taught me, what to expect in the world of work when I started my own business.
What would you say are the top 3 skills that you acquired in your corporate jobs or in the jobs that you worked after university that helped you the most when you did go all into entrepreneurship?
I think I learned first and foremost, because of the role I was doing, was strategic thinking and looking at a business in a lot of detail. Today, many people think about businesses on social media, think, well, there's no cost to set up. I can, with no capital, I can start a business. I can just use my own, social media account to promote it, so on and so forth. But if you want to really be successful at business, there are a lot of other parameters that you need to look at. And so it gave me the tools, the mindset, the analytical mind to really evaluate business, building a business plan, which is what I learned and did a lot of. So that helped. And I think the last thing was the social skills of understanding how to deal with people, understanding their motivations, looking at the perspective of which they are coming into the deal. Because sometimes when you want to do a deal, you know what you want to achieve. But if you really want to be successful, you really got to understand what does your customer or the client want, and how can you deliver exactly what they want if the deal is going to go ahead and be successful. So that kind of mindset was very important, because I've seen a lot of people go into deals thinking about just what they want, and kind of pitching what they think is right, and not really understanding what the customer or the client wants, and thinking, how does my product or my service really answer or really solve their problem, and even help them think about their problem maybe in ways that they haven't thought about it.
That's really, really interesting. That's pretty cool. Like, I think that goes to show, because I say a lot of the time, and obviously I'm a lot younger again, so I haven't lived life to the extent that you have, but I always say, quit your 9 to 5, everyone should be an entrepreneur. Everyone, I always say, I believe that every human being to a certain level has this intrinsic quality of building, right? I believe that we all have the capability to build and grow, and I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, right? But I actually do want to ask you, do you think that every single person should try entrepreneurship, or do you think that some people are just meant to work for others and some people are meant to be entrepreneurs?
I think it's very much about your personality and your character. Some people are more inclined towards taking risks and want more chaos and uncertainty in their lives, where others, want an environment where, things are organized, set up, and have systems and processes that they can follow and grow within that. So I don't think one necessarily is better than the other. They're two different environments. And I think it's very important for young people or whoever's going into business to understand their personality and their character. And, do they feel comfortable taking risks, being in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, where there's no guarantee of paycheck, month on month? or do they want, an environment where the tools are there, the processes and the procedures and the platforms are ready, and they can apply their skills and climb to the top of the organization. So I think both are equally valuable and equally good, and it just depends what kind of personality you have.
So then that being said, would you say entrepreneurs are born or made?
I would say some of the skill sets entrepreneurs, people are born with. They're just generally more inclined to take risks and like uncertainty and chaos more than other people. And I don't think I had to learn that. I think that was something that was in me.
So then that being said, and I can already answer one of them, I would ask you, what are the 3 top traits that are required then to become an entrepreneur? Obviously, one is the ability to take risks, right?
I would say the ability to take risks, the ability to deal with uncertainty, and also the ability to solve problems. So when I left my job, mobile phones had just been invented. It was all the craze. So can you imagine today there's 4 billion plus handsets around the world, but literally back then it was in the hands of a few people.
What year was this?
And this was going back to the early 1990s.
Okay.
And we saw that as being a huge craze. So we rode the wave of the mobile revolution at the time, and we were kind of ended up being one of the biggest distributors of mobile phones in the United Kingdom, in Dubai. I was behind setting up one of Dubai's biggest retail stores, which was Axiom Telecom, which is still there today. It was a model based around Carphone Warehouse in the United Kingdom, which paid out big commissions for every contract that somebody signed up to at the time. We end up into phone distribution, accessory distribution, and then after that, I set up Worldsim, which was disrupting the roaming market.
Yeah. Explain that in a little bit more detail, because would you say that was the catapult to take you to the next level? Would you say that the roaming business?
Yeah, I think after moving out of handset distribution, I was looking for a new challenge within telecoms, because the telecom field was growing, and we were looking at a space that was untapped, really. Mobile networks were making huge amounts of profits when people went abroad and wanted to use their phone while they were for business or on holiday. And I'm talking about £5 a minute back then. And this was also at a time when data hadn't been invented, literally mobile data. So people were using voice and SMS. And we were looking at ways of how we could disrupt that market, because £5 for a 1 minute call today, we're talking about 25 dirhams. People will be like, many youth won't believe that there was ever a time where they were charged, $25,
almost $10,
yeah, for a call. But yeah, we lived through those times. And as a traveler, I was always traveling a lot, and it was the inconvenience of calling cards or pay phones. How do you stay in touch with business people, or how do you stay in touch with family, or let your parents know that you're safe and well? So we looked at the market, and we looked at what technologies existed, and we kind of co-invented a system where when you are roaming, rather than use the operator that you are in the country, like if in Dubai Etisalat, to make an outbound call, we invented a callback mechanism embedded on the SIM card. So when you arrive in a country, you want to make a call, you dial the number, but it wouldn't place the call. It would rather send a USSD message, something like an SMS, back to our server in London to tell us that you want to make a call, and it would give us your number, and it would give us the number that you've dialed on your phone. And then we would call you, so you would receive an incoming call. When you answer the call, it would tell you, please wait while we connect to your call. So rather than use the operator in the country to make the outbound call, we would make the outbound call from London to where you want to call, and then connect the two calls together. So now you are receiving an incoming call, which was very cheap, but still talking, still talking to whoever you wanted to, because we connected your call. So it was a way of disrupting the market, and it did very well for us for many years.
How much money did you make from it?
I don't want to disclose that, but it was a good market simply because the margins were very high back then.
So how did you come up with the idea? Like, how do you just come up with such an idea that disrupts the market when it does? Because normally the advice that's given, right, is like, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just take something that's already working and find a way to add your own unique touch. So how did you come up with this revolutionary idea?
I mean, I look, there's good business sense in all different business models. Sometimes it's worth, looking at something that's already out there and improving it. Other times it's looking at, a problem that needs to, something that needs to be solved, and how do you solve it? And I used to travel a lot, and I used to travel since the age of 13, alone as a child. So I knew my mom was always worried about me, and she couldn't hold me back, and I wanted to travel. But I knew that she was like, when's he going to call me? Has he arrived? Is he safe? All the worries that a mom has. And obviously I kept traveling and lived in many countries. So it was a problem that was constantly on my mind. And being in technology, I was always evaluating different products, ideas, services, technologies. And I think I came across a technology or solution that I thought could be applied in this case. And that's how it started. Kept exploring, doing R&D until we launched the service.
Was it like just you immediately found success, or would you say you did go through a lot of failures to actually then get to this major breakthrough?
In this particular case, obviously we had a lot of iterations of the product before we went to the market, and we had a lot of barriers to overcome. So one barrier was user experience.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that was, if you tell people that you're making an outbound call, but actually you're going to receive an incoming call, and then it will connect you. Once you answer the incoming call, it would connect you to whoever you dial. So we had that user experience issue to deal with. And the other issue was when we were selling SIM cards to people, there was a practice in the United Kingdom, not so much in Dubai and in Asia, but handsets were locked. So people want to use our SIM card, but the phone was locked. So we had a lot of different challenges like this that we had to overcome, but that kind of helped us. We came up with our own mobile phones, our own tablets, which we introduced to the market, our own MiFi devices when MiFi devices were launched and when data came into play. And then we used airlines, the duty frees and airports and travel agents and tour operators to distribute that. So we had challenges, we dealt with it, we overcame it.
So on that point of distribution, because that's what I wanted to ask you, right? Because at this point in time, Worldsim is a fairly new company, right? So I would assume towards the beginning, like, you don't have this massive global reputation that you have today, right? So how do you go about, getting in touch with these, how do you build these distribution channels? How do you go about marketing it at this point? Especially because it's a brand new product, right? Like, how do you build that credibility? How did you do it?
I think so. The first thing we had to do was get a domain name that resonated with our product. So our company is called Worldsim, and I think the name kind of explains what the product is, which is a global SIM card. So that getting the domain name was very important, because that kind of gave customers or people an idea what we were doing. And I think the second thing was doing a lot of media within airplanes. So today people don't pick up the in-flight catalogs within or the magazines in their seat, but back then they did, because there was no screens on the back of your seat. Today, it's a different thing. People are just engrossed in their movies and so on. But back then, people would pick up and flick through. So we did a lot of advertising, a lot of press releases. A lot of our products were carried in the duty free. So people would be in the plane thinking, oh, wow, that's interesting. I can get a SIM card I can use when I land in Dubai or Saudi or Singapore. I can buy it on the plane. So as soon as I land, it'll work when I switch it on. So that was.
But how do you convince these airlines and duty free and these companies to sort of work with you and put your product in their catalogs? And how's the process of that?
I think you've got to knock on doors, send samples, speak to people, demo the product. And, most people at that time, when they saw it, they were blown away. And they were like, when they looked at the difference in rates that the normal operator would charge compared to what we were charging, it was kind of a slam dunk sometimes.
Brilliant, man. It's very, very interesting. It's very hard to just come up with an idea, right? That's revolutionary like that. Like back then there was no roaming SIMs, nothing of the kind, right? Now today, I mean, how did you deal with that? How do you deal with then, big players coming into the market, coming back in, taking that market share?
Yeah, so once we were in all the airlines, we'd obviously, being a trailblazer,
people want to copy you, right?
People want to copy you, right? People want to copy a lot of companies. People would see us in the airplane, on YouTube eventually, in trade shows. and it'd be like, how are these guys doing it? And so on. And we would get a lot of phone calls and people asking questions. But I would say that, look, you're a trailblazer. It's good, and it's also difficult in that you're kind of laying the path for everybody else to walk on. You've kind of made the investments. You've opened up all the doors. You've educated the market. And I remember having a call with Three. It's a network in the UK. And they, many years after we launched, came up with a product called Roam Like Home. And the product manager at the time was, told me in so much words, like, we love what you guys did, and we were looking for ways to establish our network because I think they were number 3 or number 4 in the United Kingdom. They had Vodafone, T-Mobile, O2 at the time, and they were kind of lagging behind. And they were like, how do we disrupt the market? And they said to me, we looked at what you guys were doing in roaming, and we said, let's launch Roam Like Home product. So I'm sure a lot of networks kind of copied our ideas and came to market.
Were you never tempted to sell? Because I'm sure when you are a trailblazer, people must be like lining up to one, especially the big mobile phone companies.
So we had a big offer just before the pandemic. But what was also happening at that time...
Can you say how big it was?
It was in 3-digit millions. So,
wow.
But we were about to go into a phase where eSIMs, and for in case some of your listeners don't know what an eSIM is, basically an eSIM is a virtual SIM card. So we were selling physical SIM cards, but now you can online buy a eSIM from any store or via an app and download that onto your phone. Now this was going to be a game changer for us because, and the company that wanted to buy us knew that was coming. And obviously we had a domain name, a reputation, we had distribution channels in place. And we were thinking, we had challenges that people had to buy us a week before they travel because they had to get delivery of the SIM card, check it works on their phone. And we had limited distribution points in which we could sell it. But now we're thinking there's over 1 billion travelers in the world. They can buy this on the plane, before they leave, when they land, just with data connection. As long as they had data, they could buy an eSIM. And so we were thinking at the time that the opportunity for us and the value that we were getting...
You can make way more.
Yeah, because now we can access way more customers. Within minutes, literally takes 3 minutes to install an eSIM in your phone. So we were thinking maybe we were getting undervalued. And then, of course, what happened? In 2019, the pandemic came.
That screwed everything up.
And that really hit us hard because all travel had stopped. So literally, we had no customers using our products. We thought it was at 6 months, was it 1 year? Ended up being nearly 3 years before everybody opened up. We went into survival mode. It was a question of, how do we survive the pandemic? Because all our revenues depended on travel.
We'll touch upon what you did to pivot because it's awesome what you guys did, and obviously that's when I joined you. But before we get into that, so what I want to know is, so you get this massive multi-million-dollar offer, right, to buy your company, and obviously you said no because you guys saw the opportunity for yourself. In hindsight, which is obviously the most annoying thing in the world, if you could go back in time to change it, would you have sold?
Maybe. But look, everything happens for a reason.
Of course,
now I've seen some of the valuations that eSIM companies are getting, some of our competitors are getting, and it's way higher than what we were being offered at the time. So it's kind of given me more motivation, more energy to like go and do this right, get back on the path, and start delivering. So look. No regrets.
Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason, for sure.
So let's definitely talk about pandemic and how you guys had to pivot, right? Because your whole business is predicated on people traveling, right? Primarily you are relying on people to travel. So now when COVID comes, no one's traveling, so you're not making any more money, right? So obviously as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you would say one of the traits that is required to be a successful entrepreneur is the ability to adapt and pivot and evolve and understand what problems you can solve depending on what situations you're in. So tell me what you do then. COVID hits, you probably stop making money. How do you pivot?
Yeah, so look, COVID hits, revenues come to 10% of what they were, if not lower. We have loads of expenses, loads of staff in the United Kingdom, salaries to pay. What do we do? Now, governments came up with schemes to kind of furlough in the United Kingdom. We had to kind of cover part of employee salaries, but some of our staff on much bigger salaries than what furlough would do. So what we did is we decided, look, we don't know how long this thing is going to go on for. How can we keep our operations going? Don't shut shop. We keep our customers, because we had lots of customers, millions of customers around the world. They're not using it all. They weren't traveling, so we weren't under pressure because we knew they couldn't travel. They weren't using the service, but we didn't want to lose those customers. We knew they were valuable, that one day they'd come back. What we did was we had to let our staff go, but we opened a back office in India, and lucky we had started that process before pandemic, so we expedited that. We're able to bring down our costs. But look, when you have to keep one SIM card on a network, or you want to keep 1 million SIMs on a network, the physical infrastructure is the same. So there were certain costs we just had to bear. And so in order to try and cover those costs, what we did was we looked at our supply base, our customer base, and we said to ourselves, where is the demand? What kind of products, are people buying in the pandemic? And obviously, the natural way to go was to do PPE or personal protective equipment. And because we had contacts and we did business in China, we were able to even the Chinese, our customers had pivoted, and whatever they were doing, they've also went into doing PPE. So we started supplying PPE to our customer base. They weren't buying mobile services, but many of them bought PPE from us using our mailing lists and our website. But we supplied other businesses in the United Kingdom and around the world, in India, in the Middle East, and in European countries. With PPE. And that's when
I joined.
You finished your degree and you said you want to be an entrepreneur, you don't want to go into law, and so you joined us, and what doors that opened up.
Big time. That changed the way I thought about things. When I saw how money was made, when I saw how the back ends were built, when I saw how you guys worked, it was awesome. It was awesome. I learned a lot. It's crazy because in the moment, I didn't realize how much I was learning. And now when I look at everything in retrospect, when I look at everything that I did and got to see and got to learn, it's insane how much of what I saw firsthand has built my mentality to the way it is today. And I would say the most important thing that I learned, the biggest thing that I learned that to me was the most inspiring is, even after everything you accomplished throughout your life, even through all the successes you've had, it was the hunger to keep pushing. For me, that was you don't have to work. You don't have to, right? You are financially free now. You can do what you want, but it's the fact that you were still how can I keep making, where can I push? Where can I solve problems? That for me was very eye-opening of I used to think, you just, you work and then you retire and then, you collect a pension and, that's it. But that was very, very inspiring to me.
And I think that's also important when it comes to knowing yourself, because many people might give up, when faced with big challenges. And that's why I always tell young people, make sure you want to be an entrepreneur, because it's possible that you won't be doing the same business your entire life. And many companies have come and gone, and I'm not doing the same stuff necessarily I was always doing. But if you've got the entrepreneur mindset and you know yourself well enough, then if you do need to pivot or you do need to change or do something else, then it's not going to feel alien to you. And sometimes today I feel that many people, are swayed by social media. A lot of these online gurus and mentors and speakers inviting people to go into entrepreneurship. But it's not necessarily for everybody. I'd ask people to think about really, are they the right type of person to thrive in that environment?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit then, right? Because I think the one thing we can probably both agree on is that the internet itself has created opportunities, right? There's always opportunities in the world, and I would argue that the internet, in terms of the ability to reach people, that limitless reach, has opened up new opportunities. Like you said, it doesn't mean everybody can make money off it, but what are your thoughts on the way that opportunities have come out of the internet? What are your thoughts about the new wave of internet entrepreneurs and, these 23-year-olds? Because you're right, most people are selling a lie, most people are selling BS. But at the same time, there are people out there who are making money, right? Leveraging the internet. There are people who are young, 23, 24, 25, who maybe 10 years ago, it takes 5 to 10 years to build a good business. And now within, 2 to 4 years, they're killing it. And So to talk me through what you think about this new wave of internet entrepreneurs.
Look, I think every 10 or so years, there's a new wave that comes, and you've got to be ready to ride the wave. For us, it was mobile, then it was internet, then it was social media, now it's AI. But, the metaverse is still to really expand, so that's probably a new area that's going to come up. So I think, you've got to identify what the waves are, which is number one, quite important, and then see how you can disrupt, or how you can add value, or how you could, surf that wave at your time. And I think you've got to really understand how money is made. If you're asking about the internet today, understand how money is made on the internet. Many people, fall into this just because, they enjoy the dopamine. So they initially get into it, they post some videos, some content. They may be creators, they enjoy creating, but they like the fact that they're getting followers and likes and hits and so on. And that kind of grew into a business naturally without much thought. Obviously, today there's a lot of information on the internet about, how much money you can make. But you've got to understand your space, I would say, very well. It's very crowded. Today, anybody with a phone can start recording stuff and, become your competition. The barriers to entry are pretty much non-existent. You've got to own a phone, have a data connection, and, you're pretty much, you can become an influencer. So whilst that it's a positive, it's also, the whole world is your competition. You've got 6 billion competitors. And it's just going to get more and more competitive as time goes on. And I also think now I've seen myself AI influencers. So people who've been created complete out of AI that are now who've got 500,000 followers already, and people think that they're real people.
Yeah.
And they're able to post content 24 hours a day. So how do you compete with that? So I think understanding your space, the challenges, the way technology is evolving is very important.
So wouldn't you then say it does just simply come back down to the same element as anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur in general, and that is whether you do have the tools to become an entrepreneur? Wouldn't it just come down to, are you willing to put the work in over a long period of time? Because that's what it's about, right? Longevity, not overnight.
So I think, having the character, the skill set, is important, but I think understanding the space is very important, because this space is going to evolve very fast. Things are going to change very fast, and you kind of knowing what direction it's heading is very important, because you could be relevant in your space for a couple of years. You could be talking about something. Imagine the guy who was pushing cameras, assumed existed before the digital camera or the phone camera. Where would he be today? So you'd be able to adapt. You've got to have the skill set to adapt, but also understand the space and the market you're in, how that's going to change in 3-5 years time.
That being said, then what advice would you give to a young aspiring entrepreneur, who wants to get started today and doesn't know exactly how to get started? What would you tell them to do?
I'm very much for education. So I would say first, get your degree, make sure it's a degree that you want to do at a school that you want to go to, work hard to get there, make sure you get that grounding, that knowledge, those tool sets about how to think about problems, not just the thing that you want to solve at this particular moment. But I think universities play a role in teaching you a mindset and a skill set about how you, when faced with different problems, how you can, how you can adapt, how you can pivot, how you can analyze it. I think that's important. I wouldn't give up on education. And the second thing I would say is, whatever you're going into, seek advice, look for a mentor, look at somebody who's done it, who's achieved it. Number two, and number three, do your homework, build a business plan, and stick with the business plan. Because sometimes people, they make a business plan, think about it, but pivot a lot.
They don't see success for the first 2 months.
Yeah, they might 2 or 3 months. Or even if they do see success, they see a lot of low-hanging fruit all around them.
Shiny objects.
Shiny objects that distract them from their business plan. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And it happened to us as well, that you kind of go off course and it, still picking up the fruit, a bit like Mario, the Mario game where you're picking up coins everywhere rather than just trying to get.
You see this new money tree come out, and you're like,
and so you're just, you get distracted. So I would say, those three things are quite important. And maybe I would add one fourth thing is, don't necessarily always look where everybody else is looking. And at the moment, a lot of attention is focused on social media, the internet, and you do get a lot of ideas. But remember, there's the whole world is looking where you're looking, sometimes look at the opposite direction. Because there are a lot of industries that are not sexy, that don't suit social media. You're talking about industry, manufacturing. It's not always something that somebody wants to look at. But we still need to drive cars. We still need to eat food. We still need the chemicals that clean our industries and keep society moving. There's a lot of business out there. People are making good money that's not necessarily being pushed.
Because it's not flashy,
It's
right?
not flashy. It's not trendy. That's out there, and people can make a lot of money there.
Interesting. No, I think that's great advice. I think follow the money doesn't mean go into social media, right? Like there's money in a lot of places. Yeah. Tell me what you think about work-life balance. How do you balance business, or especially when you were younger, right? When you were actually in a position where you had to work, how did you balance family, work, religion? How do you balance these things?
So I think, again, this comes down to you understanding what your purpose is in this world and what might happen to you when you leave this world. I think that's a very important question everybody should ask themselves, because that will kind of determine what balance or what emphasis you give to different parts of your life.
So what is your purpose?
I mean, as a practicing Muslim, obviously I know in this world is not the end. There is an existence for us after this world, and therefore that then naturally creates balance in your life. And I kind of look at my life in 4 quadrants. So you've got your health quadrant, then you've got your spiritual quadrant, then you've got your family, community, philanthropy, and the last quadrant is your material quadrant. And you've got to try and balance all those 4 quadrants, keeping in mind what you believe and what where you're headed. And I think that having a work-life balance is very important. But that will always be tailored to your mindset and what you believe life is about.
So you think work-life balance is contextual to the individual then?
Absolutely.
But do you think you had work-life balance at the start of your journey? Or was it much more business-centric at the beginning? Because a lot of entrepreneurs out there, right, what they'll say is, you need to sacrifice, right? Like you have to put the work in, you have to put the hours in, you have to educate yourself, you have to learn, you have to, figure out exactly what the market dictates. Because like you said, right, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be a risk taker. You have to understand that, a paycheck may not come every month. And so how do you deal with that balance at the start of your journey? Do you have to sacrifice certain elements in order to actually become a successful entrepreneur? What did you do?
For me, I was following my passion. So I think when you're following your passion and you love what you're doing, things come naturally. So you're not always looking at the hours. You're not always thinking, oh my God, I've worked beyond 8 p.m. at night. Is it, I should be doing something else. So I think that's important, that you're doing something that you're passionate about. So that kind of, takes off a bit of pressure from you. Then obviously having a family and a community that you belong to also helps keep you in balance, because you get invited to functions, you've got programs at the community to go to that you get invited to, so that kind of keeps pulling you back and forces you to give time to different areas of your life. And then obviously you've got your health and your love for sport, if you're a sporty person. That kind of pulls you once a week to your football matches or your badminton games or to going to the gym. So for me, I think I didn't have to think about it in a lot of detail. I would say that because I was very active in a lot of areas in my life, I was getting pulled nicely in those directions. When I was more settled in life later on, when I had kids, I had to think more about making time for the family and spending time for my kids. I think it's very important, because I think today people like to outsource child rearing and thinking that social media will raise their kids, because you see kids with tablets and
That's
parents
the worst
just
way to
like,
do it, yeah.
I can't be bothered with this, or I'm tired, or I've lost patience. They give the kid a tablet, and the kid at the age of 2 probably knows it better than you do.
Crazy.
And they think that they let Apple or Samsung raise their children, which is a huge problem.
You're literally outsourcing your
child to whatever's on social media, or whatever there's out there, which is a big issue and a big problem. I think we've fallen into that trap, unfortunately, and there are consequences to be paid for that. But luckily, my wife was making sure that I spent time with the kids. We did a lot of family holidays, spent time with the community, traveling, doing religious trips. So that was important to me.
Awesome. So you touched upon one of the quadrants in your life. I love how instead of keeping family as a completely separate quadrant, you bundled family, community, and philanthropy into one. Yeah. But it's very interesting.
It's a very important reason why, because today it takes a village to raise a human being.
Okay.
So it's not just the family that will raise your kids. Your kids get their identity from the family, obviously, but it's the wider family and the community that will help form them. And that is why, people say sometimes to raise a human being, it requires a community or a village. And that's why I grouped it together, because upbringing, sometimes, families struggle, they have to, both parents are working. The community steps in to help, babysit the children, take them to classes, engage them in sports and other things. And I think it's very, very important that kids have a community, something wider than just their immediate family.
That's actually really interesting. And I never even thought about it like that. I thought you were just trying to fill the quadrants because there's only 4, but that's really interesting. So let's actually talk about, the philanthropy, the charity work that you've done. So why don't you talk about, first of all, why you believe in it, why you're so passionate about it, and then maybe your 3 greatest achievements that you're proud of and that you enjoy.
So as I said, being raised in a community and a village actually gave me a lot of opportunity, whether it was public speaking, leadership roles, volunteering, friendship, which I carry on till today. So I always felt that, look, these communities, they get sustained through philanthropy. There are people who have maybe now wiser, who've been through what I was going through and were giving back to the community in order for others to benefit in the same way. So I think, from my point of view, giving back to community was very important. But one of the things one of the early projects that I got involved with, which was one of the early founding members of Ahlul Bayt TV. Now, I don't know if you recall it, maybe it's before your time, but it was one of the Shia community channels, one of the first English TV stations we had for our community and our faith, which we launched in the UK. And obviously this was a time where kids were getting influenced by media, whether it was TV or social media. We had nothing of our own out there, and we found that people were spending less and less time in the community, more time watching TV or on their phones. And so it was important to kind of take out our own community media. So I was part of the founding members. In fact, I lent my offices or my studio, in fact, my first business office, I gave it to Ahlul Bayt TV when they launched. I also came on as a presenter for the channel many years ago, about 10, maybe 15 years ago. And we did our first live shows from Karbala. And I remember I was the first guy speaking in Iraq just after the war with Saddam. I think it's 2009, with the bombs were still going off. It wasn't safe, but we went out there with our cameras, so we had studios just a bit like this, with a lot of telecom, with a lot of equipment, and we would travel with this equipment to Iraq. It was a war zone, build a makeshift studio and start presenting. And I still remember at the time, the local Iraqis and the people in charge of the shrine would come to me and say, Arif, you are the first guy ever to speak from inside the shrine in the English language, broadcasting our message to the world. And I thought, wow, it was scary, it was daunting. We're going to a war-torn country. I wasn't a naturally trained media presenter. I was an entrepreneur. But to get the project off the ground and to show other people, look, this is what can be done, I took on that situation. Obviously, these videos are on YouTube today, but they would tell us in the shrine that, you're the first guy you started a revolution here. And that kind of touched my heart. And I felt I did something, meaningful.
Must be
That's
really
why I use the
fulfilling.
word trailblazer, because there are a lot of things in my life that I did. Maybe I wasn't, in everyone the first person to do something, but within the family or the community, it was starting something new. And that's part of my life, which I look back on fondly.
I think that's awesome. That's really, really cool. And I think it goes to show as well that, you can have a good balance in life. You have your religion, you have your philanthropy, you have your family, and you can be a successful entrepreneur also while balancing all these. And I think that's really, inspiring.
With media, I think with this TV station, what was great about it is that we had no community people within media. You know, media was an area where we shied away from as a community. We thought we keep our faith to ourselves.
Yeah.
But after launching Ahlul Bayt TV, the number of people, number of TV stations that have opened up, the number of people that got jobs in media because of what we've done is very, very heartening to think that, you know, what we did actually made people's careers, made people's futures, you know, and people are really passionate about it. Today there are a lot of, you know, TV stations, people on social media, and a lot of their training was in our TV station.
It's awesome. Did you know at 15 years old that when you look back on your life, you would have accomplished all these things that you have accomplished?
I mean, look, you know, I don't want to. There's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of great work, and I think that even though I've hit 50, you know, my mindset is my best years are still ahead of me. So I want to keep adding value. I'm grateful. I'm always thankful for the opportunities that I've been given. But at 15, no. At 15, it was very much about, you know, you're looking at things from a micro point of view, and, you know, trying to make the most of the opportunities that you had at that time.
What are 3 key lessons, the 3 biggest lessons that you've learned on your journey, both as an entrepreneur and in your personal life so far, that has allowed you to become who you are?
I think first and foremost is take care of your health. Because if you're not healthy, you know, you're always thinking about solving your, you know, whatever problem that you're facing at the moment. It kind of restricts you in what you want to do, what you can achieve, how much energy you have to do what you want to do. So never never sacrifice your health. Because there's a saying that's saying when you're young, you sacrifice your health to make all this money, and then when you've got the money, you sacrifice your money to get back your health, which is a kind of, you know, oxymoron or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's kind of, you know, working in the wrong way for you. So don't sacrifice your health for whatever goal that you want to achieve. And unfortunately today, I see that a lot of young people are working really crazy hours, or not, you know, thinking about their diet, their health. And, you know, and it has an impact on many ways. You age early, you know, you kind of, your energy levels decrease much faster than you want. So 1, don't sacrifice your health. Number 2, spend time thinking about your future. So many people, you know, when they're scared of alone time. And sometimes I see my kids, they're always wearing their earbuds. And I'm like, take them off. You know, don't be scared of the silence. The silence is very important, because when you've got the silence, you're actually thinking about, you know, yourself, your future. So I think spend time with yourself. You know, it might be uncomfortable. Some people think, you know, I feel very uncomfortable, the silence. And so they always distract themselves. But, you know, get comfortable with what is uncomfortable for you. So that's number 2. And number 3, I think I would say, is research what you want to do, because you can be climbing the wrong ladder. Sometimes, you know, we're in this world racing, chasing the first thing we see. We're very impatient. You know, social media has made us impatient. You know, we want to, you know, have everything as quick as we want, or go in a particular direction. I would say, look, step back, don't rush into things. Think about what really pleases you, what you want to achieve, and then go after that. So those would be my 3 takeaways.
What is the legacy that Arif Chandoo wants to leave behind when he's gone? How do you want to be remembered?
It's a very good question. And, you know, it changes with every decade, and that you get older as how you want to be remembered. But for me, I think, you know, the most important thing is pleasing your creator. As a Muslim and as a practicing Muslim, our purpose in this world is to please our creator. And I think if I'd achieved so many things in my life, but your creator is not happy with you, then that would, you know, be failure for me. That would be like, you know, it's not worth anything, because you're going to be under the ground, in a grave 6 foot under the ground. You know, every grave looks the same. When you go to a graveyard, you can't tell who was the richest, who was the fastest, who was the smartest, who was the best looking. Graves look the same. So for me, I think, you know, pleasing my creator is the most important thing. Having that feeling in your heart that, you know, whatever you've done it in the right way. I think how you do things in this world is very important. You know, many people want to achieve lots of things, and sometimes they take shortcuts, and you see it in world politics, you see it with countries and the way they're dealing with other people, and, you know, they want things and they don't care what the others are thinking. They go about it. But how you do things is very, very important, and do them in a way that your creator will be happy with you.
It's powerful, very powerful. You've left me. I'm gonna go home and do a lot of thinking. So that's really good. And for the viewers watching, for any aspiring entrepreneur out there, what I want to ask you is, if you were to start today with $0, no money at all, and you had the experience that you have, but again, you had no money, completely broke, give me a 5-step process that you would do to get started as an entrepreneur.
Money, people think of it as a barrier to entry for starting up a business. And probably it is to some extent. If you don't have money, it is an obstacle that you need to cross. But what I would say is, look, you are your biggest asset. And I remember I come from a middle-class family. I didn't have any money. But what you have is your reputation, your character, your personality. And I would tell every young person today is, people invest in people. People do business with people. As a Muslim, obviously our beloved Prophet we know was a very successful entrepreneur. And his 2 qualities were that he was the most trustworthy and the most truthful. And because he had those 2 characteristics, he didn't need a single penny. People trusted him with their money, with their business, with their merchandise. And that's how he became the most successful entrepreneur of his time before he declared his prophet and spread his message. So I would say to people, look, people will invest in you. You don't necessarily need the money, but people will look at your character, your mindset, your personality, who you are. And if they can resonate with you, if they can trust you, if they think you're truthful, they will invest. You don't need to have any money. So looking at a business idea, which is low capital entry, is not necessarily the way to go. You can have a very big project that requires a lot of capital, and you don't have that capital. You can go to an investor. You don't have to put any money into it. Think about your plan, make a business case, think it through properly. But at the end of the day, me as an investor, when I invest in people, the business plan is important, but I look at the person. Can I work with this person? And I've made mistakes in my life. Sometimes I've looked at the business plan and I thought, wow, this is an amazing business model.
But the person wasn't right.
But the person wasn't right, and I lost a lot of money. And sometimes I've had a person that is outstanding character. The business case wasn't the best, and I got involved and improved it, and I did very well. So I would always stick with investing in the person. So that's what I would tell all young people. Invest in yourself, not only your skill set. It's important. Not what you know is important, but your character first and foremost.
But how would I put myself out there? Like, okay, you're saying like invest in yourself, it's about trust, like you don't need money. That's good, but how would someone know who I am?
And that is why I think community is very important, because I think community gives young people a chance in their volunteering, in participating in functions, that you take voluntary roles, you get involved in the community, people get to know who you are, what you're capable of. And I think through those interactions, you begin to build your character and people get to know who you are.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
I wish you all the success in your new venture and your podcast. I'm sure it will do very well.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll put Arif's link in the bio below. Also, if you want to buy a really good eSIM, I'll put the link to his business below as well. So make sure to check that out. I've also launched a free community recently to help aspiring entrepreneurs find fulfillment and attain financial freedom. So make sure to also check that out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.